special town halls.
This is the 75th. You count that.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. But it's important to me, because that's how I believe being a representative is. I'm a new member of the House. Started in November 2010, so I'm a freshman member. I'm new to this political arena. But the bottom line is I think the most important thing, and part of the political arena, as you can see, we have trackers. Good to see you. Thank you for coming out this morning.
No problem.
Thanks for you. Do you go to Fredonia?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. So that's all part of it. But so we welcome them to the race too. But so we want to continue on having these public forums, having a conversation. I'm a firm believer in that. In order to represent people, not only talk with people, to people. Some of my colleagues down in Washington, they want to talk to people rather than actually listen to people. And so I'm really here to engage in a conversation and have that discussion. Many of you are new to me, and I'm new to you, so maybe just a 2-minute bio on who we are. Personally, I'm the youngest of 12 kids. I got 8 older sisters, 3 older brothers. Amen. My mother was a real saint, but my father passed when I was 2. He was a career military officer. My mom raised the last 6 of us all by herself, and brought us back to Corning after he passed. That's our home. That's where we grew up. That's where both my parents and grandparents on both sides are from. I live in a house my grandfather built back in 1922. So we've been in this area quite some time. So we have long roots in the upstate Corning area, western New York. My wife was born in Dunkirk at Brooks Memorial. So she lived in Silver Creek for a little bit of time, and then South Buffalo over in Hamburg. So we know the area very well. Went to college at Alfred University, which is just down the road. So stayed close. Went to law school in Ohio. And then we came back, and because my wife was from Buffalo, and me being from Corning, at that time my mom was still alive, and her parents were both alive, so 50-yard line was Rochester. So we worked there for 3 years, and then my mother passed, and we started having our kids, and we decided to move back to our homestead in Corning, and that's where I opened up my law practice and my property development businesses. And so there was 4 businesses that we started. We employed about 30 people at the height of it. And then politically, there was a mayor of the city of Corning that I disagreed with, that I thought was not representing us in the best way. He'd been on city council for 20 plus years, and nobody wanted to challenge him because he was kind of there forever type of attitude. And I said, you know what, if no one else is going to run, I'll run. And so we ran, became mayor, served our term as mayor, and then the same situation kind of was what happened with the congressional race. Eric Massa was my predecessor. I disagreed with many of Eric's proposals and policies, and the mindset was, we got redistricting, no one's going to run against them, that type of thing. And it was also at the time, if you recall, there was a lot of concern about where the country was going. It was a time when the Tea Party became active, when people were coming out in rallies and pulling signs out of their driveway or their garages. And I felt, you know what, if no one's going to challenge this way of representation, I'll step up, I'll run, because I believe the $16 trillion in national debt that we have now, at that time it was $11 trillion, in the beginning of President Obama's administration, that level of debt is just not sustainable and not acceptable. And the economy, I just looked at my kids, Autumn and Will, and I just said, if I have an opportunity to do something and I don't, then I'll be kicking myself the rest of my life. And I wanted to make sure we go to Washington to do something, not for a title, not all the pomp and circumstance with the job. And so that's why we ran. We were successful. And then after 2 years, I thought, okay, well maybe it's time to go back. Maybe we'll right the ship, so to speak. But it's clear to me, DC, it's changing. I think this freshman class has changed a lot of DC, and I think you're seeing a lot of the establishment pushing back on it now. But the job isn't done. These are huge problems. These are significant problems. And I think history is going to say November 2010 is where the ship started going down the right path. But we need to continue that path in November 2012 and onward. And so we're going to continue, and that's why we're here, and that's why we're running. And the ultimate issue, the number one issue that we focus on, it's all about jobs, because part of dealing with this national debt, this $16 trillion, critical piece of the solution to that puzzle is getting people back to work, and actually getting that 8%, 8.3% unemployment rate down to something more acceptable with 3%, somewhere in that range. You get to that level, you're growing this economy, you're providing opportunities for generations, you're allowing people like my daughter Autumn, my son Will, an opportunity to enjoy the American dream that we've all taken so much of advantage of and enjoyed. And so that's why we're running, that's what it's about. So I'll open it up at that point in time. We do have we run our office like a business, so what I think they're printed out here is some of our points of, when we focus about jobs, when we talk about jobs, our mission statement has these 4 points that we spend all our day on. And it's about policies and legislation and repeal legislation that tackles the debt, support comprehensive tax reform. 70,000 pages of tax code is stupid, just to put it bluntly. It needs to be simplified. Regulatory relief, because if we want small business America to blossom and grow, we've got to get Washington, D.C. off their back. We're not talking about no regulations, but a hard discussion about reasonable regulations and what regulations have a return on the investment from the cost that they represent to our small businesses. And then the 4th point is a comprehensive energy policy, because if we're going to grow this economy, if we're going to have the industrial manufacturing rebirth that I'm committed to and want to have us building things in America again, we have to have the power in order to do it. And that comes from an all of the above comprehensive domestic source of energy that people can rely on to have long-term stable utility costs going forward. And then at the same time, this overbleeds into another issue of national security, because our dependency issue on foreign oil, Middle Eastern oil, crude oil, is critical that we deal with that dependency issue and get ourselves independent of that Middle Eastern dependency situation we find ourselves. So that's kind of what we're about. That's what we are. And right now we serve on the Ways and Means Committee. When we got to Washington, we were on Transportation and Judiciary. Then we went to the Rules Committee. And about 9 months ago, about a year ago now, about a year ago we were appointed to the Ways and Means Committee. So that's the committee that takes care of all tax policy, trade policy, and healthcare policy, as well as Social Security for America. So it's a committee that has a lot of influence, and we're hoping to bring that position to the benefit of the district, the benefit to the state, upstate arena, and the rest of the nation. So that's us. And with that, I will open it up. Yeah.
I have a question. I don't think you can really answer it, but I want you to be aware of it. I was reading in a Reader's Digest in 1957, before your time, that the government was taking the money out of Social Security, and that was their little piggy bank, And they keep doing this, and they said, we'll give you an IOU, but they never paid back. Did you understand that one?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's wrong.
It's wrong.
And they're saying Social Security's broke. Well, sure it's broke if you keep taking the money out of it all the time.
And if you're using that money for operation and maintenance expenses of the federal government, that's why there's serious problems with Social Security that need to be repaired and reformed so that it's preserved. And that's one thing, today as we're coming over here, we heard the news that Paul Ryan's been announced as the Vice President candidate with Mitt Romney. And one of the things I so appreciate about Paul, he serves with me on the Ways and Means Committee, is he has the courage in order to talk about the issues that are real and significant. And until Paul Ryan really kind of put him at the forefront with his roadmap, if you remember the old roadmap before the Ryan budget became the terminology, what he talked about is that Social Security and Medicare are on a path to bankruptcy. I mean, it is not a question. There is no serious scholar down in Washington, no serious report that's out there that says Medicare and Social Security it can be solvent if we continue the status quo. It is on a path to bankruptcy. It's on a path to collapse. And he's got the political courage to go out there and talk about it and say, let's talk about solutions to those problems. And that's where I join him on that. We're not afraid. Political advisors tell us all the time, don't talk about Social Security, don't talk about Medicare. I'm sure my opponent will probably come and attack us and say we want to kill Medicare, we want to destroy Social Security. It's the farthest from the truth, ladies and gentlemen. You know, I can remember my mom raising us. I mean, she raised us on a Social Security check and a military death benefit check. And I can remember her pounding at the end of the month, balancing her checkbook on an old calculator, just to stretch every penny. And we relied on those checks. And there's seniors in this country that rely on those checks, and there are seniors in this country that earned what they're getting, and we need to stand firm with them. But you can't be honest with seniors and say, okay, we're not going to talk about Social Security and Medicare because it's not bankrupt, and we're going to continue to play the elected officials game, and it gets pushed off because the problem gets worse. And then what could happen if we do nothing? The systems collapse while the people that are in them and on them are relying on them. And that's not right. That's just not right. That puts millions of Americans, especially older Americans and future older Americans, at risk if we don't do something to resolve and solve these problems. But your Social Security point is very well taken. It needs to be treated as a trust. That's why they call it a trust fund. It's supposed to be held in trust. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jackie. I'm from Fredonia.
Okay.
And my concern is basically Medicaid.
Okay.
And how out of hand that is as far as them always getting a raise, more than my husband and I get. And the benefits they have more than me as a working person. And, you know, supposedly it's being worked on, but my really concern is Medicaid and the growth of it, especially in this area.
Medicaid and the whole welfare mentality and programs. We've heard that numerous times as we've gone around and talked to people up here in Chautauqua County. And it's not unique from the rest of the district too. People are very much concerned that the people that are getting up and going to work, where's the incentive to continue that as the welfare state continues to balloon? And you know, I share your sentiment that having a safety net, no one's talking. I don't support taking away those safety nets for the people that are truly knocked to their knees with a life event or a catastrophic situation or something where because of something in their physical makeup, for example, they're just not in the position that we as healthy human beings can do things that they can't. So we're talking about preserving and protecting those, but I think our system's gone way too far. And that's where we're firmly committed to trying to chip it back.
Especially when you have a better cell phone than I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting because we've had a bunch of meetings with some folks, and one of the concerns, I remember vividly, she got diagnosed with ALS, and she came in. She lives down in Allegheny County, Cattaraugus County, right on the border, and she went to the LIHEAP office to apply for benefits, and that's a situation where, you know, that's what it's designed for. But her husband was working at the time. He was a woodworker. He was a carpenter. And the office said, he's got to stop working in order for us to have you qualify for these benefits. That's wrong. That type of policy is wrong, where we should be standing with those individuals. We should be standing and saying, you're trying to do the right thing, rather than just kind of blindly handing out the cash. So we're talking about individual responsibility and accountability in our conversation and what I believe in as part of it. So we'll continue on. You know, the other problem that we have with Medicaid right now under the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, that maintenance of efforts provision that's in there, we've been working with the governor and trying to highlight to the governor about, I think this is a real problem, because in the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare piece of legislation, there's a whole slew of statutory language that says the states have to maintain the level of Medicaid efforts that are in effect on the date of the enactment of Obamacare. Essentially what that means is that the states, because New York, you know, we've heard the statement that New York provides the Cadillac plan. Every authorized program under Medicaid that is allowed by the federal government is essentially allowed by New York State. And because of that, because of Obamacare, because of the Affordable Care Act, they can't change the level of services because they got to maintain those efforts. I don't know how you deal with the Medicaid problem with it ballooning, with it getting larger, if you don't allow Albany to have the ability to change the packages of services.
And don't give them a raise.
And don't give them a raise. And don't expand it. It doesn't make sense.